So, welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, at Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make resources such as books and courses and information for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice but maybe don't know where to start or can't find out the information they need. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you, and I can't wait to get started. So let's go. Hello, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson, and welcome to episode 2 of the 5-part series on creating colour in pottery eco-consciously. And that is because we're celebrating the release of a new book called Eco-conscious Pottery Colour, a guide to colouring ceramics with scrap metals, glass, plant ash and clay, which will be released on the 14th of September 2024, which will be available from the Oxford Clay website and also Amazon as well if you want like a paper copy of the book. So the book contains 80 recipes that are made with eco-conscious colorants, and it's about 4 ways of creating color in pottery without using commercial metal oxides. So last week, in episode 1 of this series, we talked about commercial metal oxides and how, they can create quite a lot of pollution when they are mined from the earth, how they're a non-renewable resource, which is depleting over time. We talked about the fact that the artisanal mining sector can be quite like a big part of the supply chain of some metal oxides. We talked about how it's really important to conserve resources, as part of like this new economic model of like the circular economy, thinking about how the earth's natural resources can be like repurposed, recycled. And that's what we're going to be getting into today in today's episode. We're going to be talking about how metals, scrap metals, in this episode 2 of the series, we're going to be talking about how metals can be recycled into pottery colorants, into metal oxides effectively. So, right, let's get into it. Okay, so right, what we're going to be talking about today is 2 metals. We're going to be talking about iron, and we're also going to be talking about copper. Okay, so let's talk about iron first. So, okay, you've probably seen iron when it oxidizes, it actually goes rusty. So, lots of there's lots of rusty metal around, and as potters, we can actually use rust, that top layer of like iron oxide, which has been created, when the iron has oxidized in the atmosphere and with moisture. We can use rust in our pottery to create color. So yeah, rust is such an interesting colorant because it's very very orange when you've kind of sanded it off metal. But in glazes, it often creates these really beautiful, kind of deep, rich, kind of brown colors. It often creates like a speckledy kind of effect in glazes. And it can be mixed as well with other eco-conscious colorants to just create some really, really beautiful glaze effects. So, yeah, like I was saying to you, there's 80 recipes in eco-conscious pottery color. So, yeah, lots of those use rust. So essentially what we're doing as potters is just like sanding that top layer off, collecting the rust as a powder, and then we can use that in our pottery glazes to create colour. Okay, so the second way that we can recycle metals into pottery colour is we can use copper. And the process is slightly more involved with copper because what we're doing in the process I go through in the book Eco-conscious Pottery Colour is using using copper wire, which has been, from old electrical items that like don't work. I actually collect mine from like charity shops that can't sell those electrical goods because they're broken. And what I do is I strip the wire of the plastic casing. I kind of create it, make it into a kind of like a wire nest. And wire's brilliant to use because that copper is like fantastic for creating oxide, and it's got very large surface area, so lots of oxide can be created with like quite small amount of wire. And the oxide that's created from copper is called verdigris. And I have spoken about verdigris like before on the podcast. I absolutely love verdigris. It creates absolutely beautiful colors in pottery glazes. So yeah, I've been experimenting like all over this summer with verdigris, and I also mixing it with different things like different plant ashes and clays, and I've created some like incredible colors with verdigris. So although verdigris is a kind of greeny, just seeing if I've got some around here. If you're watching the video on YouTube, yeah, I've got a little. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll just describe it. It's a kind of like bowl of verdigris. It's like a kind of it's a very green substance when you actually make it from the copper wire. You can also make verdigris actually with brass and bronze, anything with like copper in, any metal with copper in. But it works really well if you use copper wire. Yeah, so it's a very bright green oxide that you make with the copper wire. We're basically just oxidizing it with a salt and vinegar solution. So it's like a very easy process, and then just crumbling the verdigris off. But the colors that you can make with verdigris are so beautiful. So they range from like a kind of light blue to like a very deep like sea green, and you can mix it with other colorants, like I said, with like rust. You can mix it with clay. I've mixed in this book in Eco-conscious Pottery Colour. I've mixed it with red clay, and it makes this incredibly like bright green glaze. And you don't need much to create like really vivid colours as well. So yeah, so it's an amazing colorant. It's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, like I said to you, there's 80 recipes. Many of those use verdigris. Yeah, bright, like beautiful light blues, sea greens, bright grassy greens. You can make those all with verdigris. Um, okay, right. So let's talk about why you'd want to use recycled scrap metal into your pottery color. There are four reasons. So the first reason is that you're taking something which is already in the supply chain, like the metals. They've already all that energy has gone into creating those metals, and we can recycle them as potters. So we can be part of that circular economic model. We can take these like incredible natural resources. They're so precious that they've already been extracted from the earth, and we can use these, rather than just like chuck these electrical products like away, the wires, whatever, away into landfill. We can make pottery color from them. That will never cease to like just amaze me so much. It's incredible. So it's a way of recycling that metal. We don't want it to go to landfill. We don't want it to go to waste. We can recycle it into our pottery. Okay, so the second reason is that it reduces mining. So think about we're using the metal that's already, like I said, already in the supply chain. We're not having to like rely on these fresh resources, fresh, like new raw materials to be mined, metal ores to be mined and then made into metal oxides. We are already using what's already there. So we're reducing the need for mining raw materials. Okay, the third reason, I touched on this a little bit, is that you can create like really unique glaze colors. So, like, there's only a certain kind of amount of like, commercial metal oxides. They're kind of quite standardized. They'll be, it's probably the same kind of purity in terms of this, they'll be the same kind of, if you use them at the same concentration in glazes or whatever, you'll get the kind of same like look of glazes. Whereas like making your own metal oxides, from like rust or or copper, you can create these like incredible shades of glazes, which like of colors in glazes, which like you can't really get with commercial metal oxides. Like beautiful kind of earthy tones, like more kind of subtle colors, like more kind of beautiful, like the range of kind of greens you can get, greens, sea greens, light blues are just, yeah, it really is amazing. So the colors are like really unique that you can get with by making your own metal oxides from recycled metal. Okay, and then the fourth reason is just that it can be cheaper for potters to do. So What we're doing is we're just taking like maybe scrap, like you might even just find scrap metal. I've seen like scrap, like iron just out on the walking about on the pavement. Someone's left like an old rusty wheelbarrow out or something and they don't want it and it's rubbish. We can sometimes get this metal just completely for free. Like when I buy the electrical goods from the charity shop, I pay them like more than they would get like if they just sold it like for scrap metal, but it's still much more cost effective than if I bought like a commercial metal oxide. And then if you're oxidizing your own copper, all you're using is you're using just salt and vinegar, and so those are really like low cost. I'm just having this thought that I said oil and vinegar earlier in the episode. So just like it's just gone in my brain. I'm like, did I say oil and vinegar? It's not oil and vinegar, it's salt and vinegar. So hopefully I didn't say that. But yeah, you just use salt and vinegar. That's the solution that you spray the copper with, and then it makes verdigris. So yeah, which they're very cheap materials. And you just do it in the open air, just in a glass bowl or something. And like rust doesn't need anything; it's just doing its own thing. It's just oxidizing itself, and you're just sanding that top layer off. So wearing an FFP3 face mask, yeah, and obviously being very, very careful. I need to say this actually, like being really, really careful not to cut yourself on any like scrap metal. And if you do, you need to seek medical attention. There's a thing called tetanus, which can be like super dangerous. So it's like, yeah, just be like really, really careful when you're working with scrap metal. Um, yeah, okay, on that note, well, yeah. So like I said, it's using copper and iron, and like turning that back into metal oxides, and using it in our pottery to color our pottery glazes is just amazing. It's just I've had so much fun like creating different recipes over the summer. It's been like, yeah, it's been so good, and seeing how they work. Like I said, with like different things like different plant ashes, and by adding clay to them and seeing how that affects the color. And it's been like really, really, really fun, like creating different recipes. So it's an amazing way to color pottery. So that's the episode 2, which is like the first way of creating color eco-consciously in pottery. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I really, really can't wait to to see you on the next episode, where we'll be talking about using glass, scrap glass in pottery, and how we can use that in our work to add like color. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So until then, wishing you very, very happy potting, and I will see you on the next episode to talk all about glass and how we can use that. And yeah, I'll see you then. Okay, bye. Oh, yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you're interested to learn more about eco conscious pottery, or making your pottery more eco conscious and sustainable, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.